All opinions expressed on any program are those of the producer and are persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of DCTV. All producers and guests appearing on programs provide information and opinions based on information they consider to be reliable. DCTV does not affirm the completeness and accuracy. All DCTV members agree to adhere to DCTV's Statement of Compliance and are participants in a community medium forum where they're exercising their freedom of speech.
Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Udis. This show is a series that has been coming to you from DCTV since 2015 in a weekly program called The Network of Global Corporate Control. Today's segment is called Play It Again, Sam. Thank you to DCTV, to Carmen Stanley, Project Director, and today she's also the Studio Director, and to Cruchet Starnes, Audio and Prompter. We're going to follow storytelling rules, as we do when we're expecting newbies. I'm going to update you on what has happened in our story since March 5th, when I told you about the villain and main characters of the story. It seems that the villain has a strong reaction to being exposed and is finally beginning to understand what this means when I say that their reactions are only making things worse for them now that we have reached critical mass. Last week, we talked about the fact that we're in a new reality after a critical mass of people realized what is actually going on. Let's start out with a clip showing you a seismograph readings for an attempted nuke off the coast of Charleston on October 7, 2013.
Hi YouTube. This is an alert about an earthquake I've seen on the East Coast. Okay. Now this is really, it just strikes me as being very odd. It is a 4.5, depth of 13, off the east coast of the United States. Now I really don't know for sure, but is that the continental shelf? Is that right about where that is? Okay, this happened 2 hours ago, which would mean it's now 12:58 a.m. Okay, in the morning of October 8th. So this happened then at about 10:58 p.m. It just strikes me as very strange. Let me go to the next screen. Okay, so you can see exactly where this is. Alright, there we go. Pull that out. And you can see just where that is. So that would be where Jacksonville would be, coming off the East Coast. Alright, let me go back to the other screen. Sorry, I'm doing this by hand. So let's see if we can find that. Hold on now. 2 hours ago. There it is. It just strikes me as odd. And all this time that I've been watching earthquakes, I just don't recall seeing one. Okay. Like that. And it's concerning because at this point the USGS has been turned down. It's off. Now this is the global incident map. Alright, so stay safe, everyone. Stay alert.
We'll talk a little more about that clip at the end of the program. For background, I'm also giving you links in the teleprompter to the August 9th, 2017 segment where we also followed storytelling rules, and also the teleprompter and the segment of March 5th. You can view the archives in YouTube containing over 200 videos in this series. We the people are the most important character in our story. I'm talking about all of the people on Earth. We the people are in a coalition that also includes all of the military powers of the world. We're now cleaning up the corruption in the world's paper money issued by the central banks. I'm going to tell you more about this process called the global currency reset. The hero of the story is José Rizal, a man from the Philippines who was the superior general of the Jesuits at the end of World War II. This position is also known as the Black Pope. José Rizal put the vast wealth that used to be held by the Vatican on deposit in a trust called the Global Debt Facility for the benefit of humanity. José Rizal's lawyer was Ferdinand Marcos. Rizal and Marcos created the World Bank and International Monetary Fund as a big world cooperative to make sure the world's wealth wasn't stolen and went to the world's people. That's where I come in. I figured out what Rizal and Marcos had done. I got a lot of help to figure this out. When I say a lot of help, I mean a lot of help. The world's military powers, all of them, are making sure we stay the course so that the world's wealth stays with the world's people. I told you a couple of months ago how I bankrupted the corrupt officials in the World Bank who were trying to steal the world's wealth from the world's people. My job is to let people know what's going on. One of the ways I know what's happening is because a political scientist working for the United States National War College, José Kugler, brought me an accurate power transition model that tells us which coalitions form. There's a group called the Black Nobility, which is descended from the pharaohs in Egypt, that is at the center of the central banks that have been exposing we the people, that I've been exposing to we the people. The Black Nobility is trying to hide, and they're trying to put the blame elsewhere. The way that the Black Nobility have managed to stay in power for more than 10,000 years is through our corrupt money system. It's a simple trick. Don't use real money. Use fake money. Real money is gold or silver or anything valuable that can be used in a barter system to trade for something else that's valuable. Let me explain to you how I'm writing this story, because that is the heart of the story. An Egyptian lawyer, Ibrahim Shihada, hired me in the World Bank's legal department in 1986. I had written a paper at Yale Law School about the coalition of developing countries called the Group of 77. I've been learning from all of the whistleblowers of the world about our story. The way I knew what to tell you this morning when I was writing the teleprompter was by reading from what people had posted in my social media. And you'll see in the teleprompter what the posts were. And then somebody had posted an old tweet from, I guess it was 5 years ago, Vladimir Putin, a Teutonic Knight, a branch of the Templars. And then I'm telling you about when the banking cartel recently hacked my website, and I tweeted about that. I'm trying to put it back up. And this is a serious thing because the contact page on my website is one of the ways that you contact me. So I'm going to work very hard to get that up and running again. The banking cartel thinks it owns the world, and it broke a link where I said the rest of us don't accept their corruption, and we are stronger. It's up to us to own up to the actual reality that we're living in. And there was a picture there in that tweet that showed you that the District of Columbia was engineered to be actually a military dictatorship. And the United States Constitution is not in effect. And then I referred to somebody named Angelise Levacy, who made a comment in one of the archives for YouTube. And that comment, she was going to make a crisis with us, that we were actually going to have a crisis and a direct confrontation with the banking cartel. And I said, no, we really shouldn't do that. I got some advice from one of the listeners who wrote me and said, no, we really should not have a direct confrontation. We should leave things the way they are now, that we can show the banking cartel when they're making mistakes. We can make evidence of this, and people can see. So, for example, when the banking cartel attacks my website, people see, well, yes, there must be something that that lady's saying or doing that would make them attack her. And the main thing is about the corruption in the world's money. The private central banks, they don't have any gold. That's because most of the gold is in the global debt facility. And then if you can stop scrolling, I'm going to explain about how our money system works. Money is based on debt. The central banks are promising to pay money, and they're issuing paper which is traded for goods and services that do have value, and it's only because people agree that paper money is worth something that they're able to issue this currency. But the fact of the matter is we've given them the right to issue the currency. And if they were required to put gold, real gold, in the currency, which is what we're going to do in the global currency reset, then they wouldn't be able to bribe politicians with their fake paper money. And that's the basis of all of their corruption. And one of the things that José Rizal did, this is his genius. What he did was he went around to the royalty at the time in the 1930s, and what he did was he convinced them that he should be their agent, because what the royalty had done was right between the World War I and World War II, people explained that their gold was not safe. It was going to be stolen from them. And if the people, the royalty, would give up their gold, they would get bonds from the Federal Reserve that would pay interest. And so the royalty agreed, and they took the they sold their gold. And so the Fed issued all these bonds. They're called Treaty of Versailles bonds, and they carried interest. And what happened is José Rizal convinced the royalty, most of them, to assign these bonds to him. He was their agent. And he then put those bonds in the global debt facility. And there are $270 trillion worth of bonds, and they carried interest. And that interest has been compounding. So between the 1930s and now, those bonds are worth over $2 quadrillion, and they're in the global debt facility. Now, I'm the lawyer for the global debt facility, so what I did was I took that $2 quadrillion worth of debt, bonds issued by the Fed, and I recorded that in all of the states where there are branch offices of the Fed. And that's on behalf of humanity. So now all of the central banks are bankrupt, and we're going to wind them down. That's what we're going to do. That's what we should do, because the gold is with us, the people in the global debt facility. That's what the World Bank and International Monetary Fund were created for. And what I did a couple of months ago, and you saw it because I circulated the documents, was I went to some of the corrupt officials at the World Bank, and I gave them the opportunity to deny whether what I said was true. And they can't deny it because it happens to be true. And so they went into default, and they're now bankrupt. And one of these officials is the chair of the Development Committee. So that means that legally we've turned the tables on the Black Nobility. We have. That was what José Rizal set up for us, and I just followed through, and I'm now representing everybody. And so far, so good. Nobody has denied it, have they? And I've gone and I've bankrupted a lot of the corrupt officials, the ones that are trying to keep us from the world's wealth. And so one of the officials that I bankrupted is Donald Trump, and you can read the documents to see who else I bankrupted. So we're now. Our position is we have turned the tables. We've finished the legal work that José Rizal started out by doing. And what I did is I offered to all of the people in all of the governments, I offered to exchange the currency, the paper currency, for real, for currency that has gold in it. And there's a form of currency called Orum, where it's a plastic envelope. You press the gold very thin, and the face amount of the bill has that value of gold in it. So that offer, I wrote the letters in 2015 to all of the governments, and I've got copies of these letters, which I've posted, and I think that's what I'll do when in next week when we post this video. I'll put a copy of all of that correspondence. And what's going to happen eventually, and this is 90 to 95% likely, is we're going to negotiate the agreements with all of the countries. And we're not going to just immediately exchange the currency from the central banks for this currency that has gold. We're going to have one intermediate step, because you know that there's too much currency right now. There's too much paper issued with the quantitative easing, etc. And a lot of crooks have earned money through trafficking and whatnot. So we're not going to exchange all of the currency issued by the central banks for currency that has gold. And the intermediate step, we're going to exchange the currency from the banking, the central banks, for currency issued by the real governments. And it's going to be up to each country and their people to figure out how to get their government exchanged from the corporation that it now is. And there are a lot of people, if you look into the comments section in YouTube, you'll see that there are a lot of people that understand that this is the situation, the corruption that we're now in. That's the actual reality. But unfortunately, in addition to this problem that we have about the corruption in the money, we have all kinds of other problems that are very difficult to resolve. And one of the ones that's the most difficult to resolve is what's going on in the Middle East. And so that's when I say that we have to sequence, which is to say we have to get rid of the corruption in the world's money, which is just that's something that can be done through accounting. And there are people who are saying, well, are we going to have to wait for the governments to be reconstituted? No, we certainly don't have to wait. We do have to make sure that the gold isn't going to go missing and that the mints can be relied on. But that's going to be something that the people in the individual countries are going to be working on to see that they can hold their mint to account. And one of the documents that I circulated is a question whether we're going to require each individual country to have its own separate contract with a mint, or whether we want to have one mint that's going to be working for or a number of countries. So we have a lot of open questions that we have to answer during the global currency reset. And we don't have to all work, each country doesn't have to be held hostage until all of the countries are ready. So we can have individual countries when they're ready to go in to take things on. So there are countries which are smaller, islands, etc. And there are also some countries that don't belong to the World Bank, like Taiwan. But there's no reason why a country has to belong to the World Bank in order to get its share of the world's wealth. So, and I'm going to be discussing with everybody how we're going to proceed. This is going to be up to us now. And the reason why I'm very optimistic that we're going to manage is because all of the world's militaries are in on this. Now, I'm not talking about the Knights of Malta. I'm not talking about the brass, but I'm talking about the troops. So when I said I was going to talk a little bit about that first clip, you can see that if you're in the military and you know that somebody tried to nuke your country, which is what that clip shows you, what we found out is somebody turned off the seismograph records in the United States, and then they detonated a nuclear device in the sea. They refused to drop it on Charleston, which is what the banking cartel had planned. So there were already people in the military who understood that they were working for the people in their country and they weren't working for the banking cartel. So we've had a huge shift already, and we're now in an equilibrium. But we have to finish the job, which is to say, the people have got to change their governments to legal governments, and there's no rush whatsoever. We're in peace, and that's where we are, and we're going to all find out how we progress, because, as I've said in the teleprompter, we're all in this together, and we really all are our brother's keepers. So that's what the global currency reset is, and it's an equilibrium. You notice, for example, that Donald Trump is not the commander-in-chief, and when I've said that he's not the commander-in-chief, he doesn't correct me, does he? And what I've mentioned to you is that he really is aware of everything I'm saying. And his lawyer put letters from me on his desk during the primary. So, yeah, Donald Trump is just a big faker. And all of the politicians, they're just there to bamboozle you. And all of the universities as well. They're not dealing with me, are they? Now, it took me a long time actually to get into this situation because I started out believing that the universities were what they said they were, that they were institutions of learning. I didn't understand that what Moscow State University had published and what the implications were. And if you go back and look at the archives on YouTube of our show, you'll see that there are any number of things that just can't be explained, like all of the cities off the coasts of the oceans. How are you going to explain that? It really does need an explanation of some sort. And just hiding the truth, the easiest way to tell that there's obviously some kind of substance here is when the banking cartel breaks my website, or when I'm on the internet and they can't kick me off. And there's been any number of times that the banking cartel has backed off. So there were threats that Interpol was going to arrest me. Well, Interpol hasn't arrested me, have they? No, they haven't. So if you want to reason logically, you'll see that I'm sending correspondence to all of the embassies, and nobody is denying that that what I've said is true. And I've bankrupted any number of officials, including Brett Kavanaugh. He's bankrupt now. You can see the times that I sent him correspondence and the times that he refused to answer. So I guess the assignment that you have is to look at what the papers are that I circulate, and to see if you can find any way to argue against the logic. Because this really is logical. All of it. Everything that I say is logical. And I'm not saying that I haven't made mistakes, but when I make mistakes, I do acknowledge it. So we're dealing with explanations here. And if you have questions, I will answer them. That's my job, because my job is to convince you of what the actual reality is. I want to thank you for listening to another segment. We are stuck in a cycle of repetitions until we learn that we must learn from one another. I say that we are stronger. By that, I mean that our view of reality is what prevails because a critical mass of us understands about the corruption in the world's money. Calls for revenge will plunge the world into World War III.